You made it to level 2, deeper questions leading to deeper answers. I'm Tomas Garza, and I'm here to help you decide to transform. I'll be setting the pace for the process to support your unfolding. Learn and commit to a practice that brings simplicity and then awareness of what is ready to be released. Join me now and allow the experience of a deeper sense of love. Hello and welcome to Decide to Transform. And my very special guest is appearing again as executive contributor, as he does every month, GP Walsh, master spiritual teacher, master meditator, and a lot of fun. GP, welcome back to Decide to Transform. I've been looking forward to this since our last time here.
It's so much fun, Thomas. Tomas. It's on my calendar. Sorry, I almost said your name Anglican.
Oh, that's all right.
Yes, I look forward to this too. It's just kind of so open and free. So, where are we headed today, buddy?
Well, it is. We've got a question from a listener, which I always welcome, by the way. And the question is, they would like us to address fear, the pervasive fear, especially that's going on right now in today's day and age with the pandemic, with everything that the world's facing. And how does one choose love in the face of lots of chaos and paranoia? Big topic.
Big topic, yeah. And as a teacher in Course on Miracles, you're as qualified as I am to speak on it. It's how does one choose? I mean, what other choice do you have? I mean, okay, here's my choices. I'm just going to love and accept and be compassionate and helpful and present, or I'm going to be terrified and fearful and hiding in the corner. Not much of a choice as far as I'm concerned. I think what's behind that question is, how do I actually feel that love?
Okay.
The very fact that they asked it means they've chosen it, right? Because they say, how do we choose this over that? It means they've made the choice, right? But the inner energy of fear is so dominant that the love isn't felt.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So the question is, how do you feel it? Well, if I can just kind of, God, I love this show because we can just take our time and develop the theme.
Absolutely.
The first thing to look at is we need to go beyond love as merely a feeling, as merely a sentiment, as just yet another emotional state that comes and goes, and instead see it as a principle, as an essence. You don't need to choose to digest your food. You don't need to choose to grow your hair. You didn't choose gender or any of this stuff. It's just what is, and this is the way life functions. Each individual function is a manifestation of the totality of the functioning of life itself. So for me, the first discovery is that love is not a state; it is my nature. Which is why it feels so shitty when we're not loving. And the opposite of love is fear. It's not hate. There's passion in hate, right? It's, love is expansive, whereas fear is contractive. Love embraces everything with it, where fear becomes very, very self-absorbed. It becomes very focused on my self-protection. Now, it is part of the nervous system. It's part of our natural functioning, right? If I'm really threatened, my nervous system's going to take over, and it's fight or flight, right? I'm going to just put up my dukes, or I'm going to skedaddle, right? I mean, those are the options. First choice is always skedaddle, but if that doesn't work, then up go the dukes, and you move. And when that happens, you move from fear into anger. Fear, when you look at it purely physiologically, is simply the body getting ready to run, to escape from danger. That's what it feels like. Right? And anger is what it feels like when the body's getting ready to defend itself because it can't run. Right? So this is it. I'm ready, totally focused. And in both cases, all the energy comes away from all of the higher functions, right? The more afraid you are, the less you can think, reason, be creative, be at all present, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because all the energy, the blood's out of the brain, it's out of all of the anything extra, it's all in the muscles, it's all in the respiratory system, right? It's purely in defensive mode. Now, the nervous system is lives completely in this present moment.
Hmm.
There's no
Yeah.
sense of future or past to your
Right.
body, right?
Right.
I'm
Hmm.
warm or I'm not. I'm hungry or I'm not. I'm tired or I'm not, right? I'm afraid or I'm not. Boom. It holds on to nothing. And so its entire experience is this moment. And one of the ways to transcend fear is to actually bring your attention into the body in this moment.
Hmm. Right.
Complete attention in this moment, right? Because right now, anybody who's listening, the only reason they're listening is because there is no threat. Nothing's pestering them. The wolf's not at the door. They're not hungry. They're not struggling in this moment, right now. Don't think about the future. Don't think about the past, but right now. And if you can do that for even a moment, you'll feel your whole body just go poof. You'll just feel all of it drain out of it
Hmm.
because it always responds to whatever is dominant in your attention. Now, because it is always responding to this present moment, it is equally capable of responding to what we imagine.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
what is this is the big blessing of the human mind, and it is the big curse of the human mind.
Oh, yeah.
It's our greatest power and our greatest problem, because we can envision, we can see things, we can plan, we can strategize, we can hold, we can create things before they're even created, right? Matter of fact, that's how everything gets created. But we've all been pretty much enculturated to focus on what could go wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Now, if I focus my attention on what could go wrong, my nervous system does not know it's imaginary.
Hmm.
It's just, this is what's in my field of view. Oh, danger. Whoop, whoop, danger, Will Robinson. And before you know it, the heart rate's gone up, the creativity has begun to sag. That's the low levels of stress that we almost always feel. Right? So the the to recognize that fear is an imposition. It's not natural. Your nature is love.
Yeah.
and and it's so much greater than we can possibly imagine. If you look at it, we have the love of our spouse or girlfriend or boyfriend, romantic love. We have family love. We have the love of our kids. We have the love of our friends. We have the love of our work. We have the love of art. We have the love of nature. We have all of these are love, right? Yet
Yeah.
they're completely diverse. So then what is love? You,
Hmm.
you can't define it in and of itself. Right? But isn't isn't doesn't it stand to reason that what recognizes love as love must itself be love?
Yes. Hmm.
I mean, it seems it's hate doesn't recognize love.
No.
Indifference doesn't recognize love. So if I'm recognizing my love of art, my love of nature, it doesn't have to be the great angelic agape love, but am I just my capacity to recognize love must be love. That's what I mean by it's your nature and it's not a feeling. It
Right.
recognizes the feeling as love and this one as indifference or hate or fear. What is it that can recognize it? It must be love.
It's got to be. Hmm.
That's that's why I say, with some degree of authority, it's your nature.
Yeah.
It is
Hmm.
not acquired. It's not cultural. It's not learned. Yeah, there are cultural variations and that sort of thing, but the bottom line is, as our sense of love develops, the cultural definitions fall away, and it gets pure and pure and pure, because that's who you are. Now, that transcends merely the feeling of love
Oh, yeah.
and can begin to open up love as as compassion, self acceptance, the
Mhm.
acceptance of things as they are without fighting against them, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Also, accepting as things they are and our power to change them. Because
Okay.
obviously,
Yes.
when I use the word that accept things as they are, people immediately think resignation. And I'm not saying that. If anybody's heard the rants we've been on already on
Oh,
on
yeah.
other shows,
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
A clear recognition that on the world stage, hatred is dominating the leadership of every country. Greed, hatred,
Yeah.
and a conscious attempt to create and manipulate fear. Right? So now, the thing that allows us to recognize that and not just go along as cattle or sheep or as some programmed animal is that we all know what love is. We know that's not it. And of course, they spend a lot of money trying to convince us that that's it.
Yes.
But we all just kind of, no, that's not it. That's not compassionate.
Mhm.
That's not kind. It's not even Christian, even though they may be preaching that it is. It's not. We recognize that inherently, and to me, that's the power. This is the place to discover your own inherent capacity to not choose love, but to be it.
Okay.
Be the
Yes.
love that consistently chooses love. Because what else would it choose? Duh. I mean,
Hmm.
who wouldn't? Who wouldn't choose love? We have to be
Yes.
really pushed in the corner to want to do something, to feel or think or act in any other way. And so the fear that is so prevalent in the world has come from an essential disconnect with our nature, which of course is love. But I have to say, people aren't going to like it when I say this. This had to happen.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Say some more about that for sure.
It had to
Yeah.
happen because if it we were complacent, we developed some systems that worked. You know, there was a certain number of people, especially in the wealthy countries, who had it really well. We could ignore the fact that a lot of the world doesn't, right? And in fact, we enjoy a high standard of living because we exploit other places. Very conveniently that's left out of the narrative. We don't see that kind of stuff. But as the squeeze begins to happen, and the institutions we used to rely on and think were so benevolent show their true colors, and now you're being turned on, you're being squeezed. It isn't just some person in some country somewhere I can't find on a map. It's you're the one now that's being, and all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, who do I trust, what can I trust? And that leaves us with such a sense of just such a vacuum.
Right.
Right. I've
Hmm.
relied
Yeah.
on these things, right? They
Hmm.
were supposed to be there. The American dream, wasn't that real? Well, no, it never was. Right. Which is why, millennials now, they're lazy, they don't want to do anything, which is nonsense. It's total bullshit.
Hmm.
They know that this whole thing was an elaborate ruse.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're not promised an ever increasing materialistic future.
No.
No, they get out of
No,
high school with
indeed.
$100,000 in debt, and they're working at Starbucks. You know, it,
Yeah, yeah, it's very interesting how that the younger generations are inheriting a completely different world and a completely different view
yes,
than you and I were proffered. Because I know we were fed the ever increasing materialist
Hmm.
paradigm for sure.
Yeah, and they're not, and and they're confronting something very different.
Hmm.
But yet there's still so many people who believe that it's supposed to be the American dream,
Okay, right.
make
Yeah.
America great again, right?
Yeah.
Well, but great by what? How far back do you want to go? 1950s, or do you want to go back to the turn of century with the robber barons?
Oh, yeah. Maybe that's what he meant, right?
Yeah,
Robber barons. Yeah.
yeah, before the crash of '29,
Hmm.
right? When there's a tiny middle class,
Oh, yeah.
a tinier,
Yes.
enormously wealthy, and everybody else, right? And
Hmm.
of course, there's no income tax, right, and all of
Sure.
that kind of stuff. She's talking about the '50s. The tax on the wealthy and corporations was 91%. Want to make America great again? Put the money back in the economy. Duh.
Mhm. Yeah.
It wasn't until the
Cash
huge
money.
tax cut in the '80s that that all the souring began to take place. It went from 90% down to like 36.
Yeah, and I remember my father, who did not like Ronald Reagan at all. And by the way, listeners, GP and I are from the United States. If you haven't guessed or if you
If
haven't
you haven't
tuned
guessed
in,
yet,
so yeah, and so apply if you're from another country, apply what we're saying to what may be going on in your area because
yeah,
it's pervasive and the same. But I remember my father thinking that Reagan was going to make sure that there were no programs, no social programs left at all after all of those tax cuts. He thought, where's the government going to get their money from? And he was very vocal about that. And I was a kid, but
yeah,
still, I remember very well.
borrow it. That's when they started singing the
Yes.
praises of deficit spending.
Hmm.
A nice word for credit cards, right?
Yes.
Borrow it to the point where it ceased having any meaning. Right?
Right.
The dollar means nothing.
Mhm.
It's completely made up. Bitcoin has more value. At least Bitcoin got established by somebody offered. This is how the base value of Bitcoin got established. He offered a Bitcoin to a pizza parlor for 3 pizzas. It was like 25, $28 or something like that.
Mhm.
That was the initial price. That's what he
Okay.
tied it to in the real world.
Well, all right.
That has more substance to it now than the dollar.
Sure. Right. Yeah, and it's really interesting with the economy and money and the bank accounts where there's no actual money in it. It's just a wildly flowing
Yes.
parade of numbers, and it really proves how insubstantial everything really is.
Yes. How it is nothing but what we think it is.
Hmm.
And so the battle these days is, I like to say, we're in the middle of World War III. World
Okay,
War III is not coming. We're in it.
we're in it.
And it's a
Hmm.
battle for perception. It's a battle of the mind.
Okay.
It's a battle to find whose story is going to be most believed, what narrative is going to dominate.
Okay. Hmm.
And and so everything is directed at getting your attention and your agreement. And one of the two two things they have learned in advertising and marketing, right? There are two things that will cut through the noise, right? Our minds have all sorts of different means and beliefs and that sort of thing,
Hmm.
and trying to get through the beliefs to the point where somebody's message actually makes it to your conscious mind so you can consider it. They've all sorts of different tricks. There's two things that always work because they bypass the mind because they're visceral: the fear of death and sex. Not the fear of sex, just sex and death.
Right. Yes. Happily not the fear of. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So somebody's selling a stupid power tool with some scantily clad young woman. What in the world do they have to do with each other? Absolutely nothing. But I certainly want them to look at that wrench and see this babe. And
Yeah.
then they might the message gets through because
Sure.
the attention is got.
Mhm.
And the same thing is true of death. And the number one thing that is sold across the world, but in the United States, it's epidemic proportions. Every political campaign is about
Oh, yeah.
fear of the other guy,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
Fear of what's going to happen. Now it's fear of COVID, fear of the vaccine, fear of no matter what it is, right? It's always presented in the most fearful negative terms because that message always gets in.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
if until we become
Yeah.
conscious that that's what's happening, that there's this intention to instill fear in us, we'll be subject to it without even knowing it. But once you realize what they're doing, you become free of it. You
Right.
notice it
Yeah.
everywhere, but at that moment you have the dependence to do exactly what the woman asked us to do, which is choose love.
Mhm.
But you first have to understand the influence of fear, how it works, how it operates through the system, how the body gravitates towards it. Right? I mean, it's very natural if you look at just the evolution of the species or any species. Um, we have to be far more alert to danger than to opportunity.
Sure.
If I'm safe, well, then it's time to mate and eat the shiny fruit and stuff, right?
Mhm.
But if I'm not safe, what happens, right? There's a part of us that's all the ears are always up, right? If you ever watch like a deer, we have the mule deers in New Mexico where I was living,
Yeah.
huge ears, and they'll
Mhm.
be sitting and drinking water, and their ears are doing this constantly. So they're constantly scanning, and there'll be a sound, they'll stop, and they'll go back. It's it's just amazing. This is the way the nervous system works, and the human nervous system is no less an animal.
Mhm. Yeah,
It
yeah.
has the same instincts, the same drives, the same everything. It's just this animal vehicle that this consciousness has gotten to occupy, right? That has to come to terms with it, has to reconcile with it.
Oh, yeah.
Because you as consciousness are way more than the body, but you can't just ignore it and pretend it isn't there. That's like ignoring your car, right? No, you got to put gas in it. You got to
Oh, yeah.
maintain it, right?
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
Right. So how then the how much of the fear is manufactured
Mhm.
and how much of it is real? This is something everybody can
Mhm.
discern for themselves. There's a very well known book, well known in circles, written by Noam Chomsky, and there's one other guy, I can't remember his name now. It got published in 1988 and was called Manufacturing Consent,
Oh, okay.
and it showed how what the media did in order to create a, a tacit agreement among the people with whatever the narrative was that was being pushed by the powers that that be. And it's brilliant. You'll see it all the time, all the time now in terms of how the whole thing works. But they're manufacturing fear because they're manufacturing consent, right?
Mm. Mhm.
They want your
Yeah.
attention, whether it be somebody trying to get you to buy something, or somebody trying to get you to vote for something, or somebody trying to get you to give up some right, right? It's always an attempt to instill fear, instill it because artificially, right, and then hold out to you the solution to
Oh, yeah. Yes.
it. It's the drug dealer. Getting a little craving. Well, hey, I'm your guy,
Mhm.
right? So what it comes down to is beginning to discern what fear is imaginary and what's real. Now, this, believe me, this is not easy to do. We live in a time where pretty much all of our sources of information are at least tainted, if not outright lies.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
how do you actually find something out, right? Um, looking at things. Let's take for example the the COVID and the vaccine.
Okay. Mhm. Yeah.
Very difficult to find out genuine information about either of it, right?
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Um, the those institutions that were the most reliable, the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, and the World Health Organization, they're tainted. Right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And when you're talking about the vaccine, we're not talking about, they say it is safe. Well, the footnote is it is safe according to emergency use rules.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And emergency use rules are basically rules that the military can apply in the event of biological warfare,
Yeah.
which means that it is an imminent threat. And so a much higher tolerance for risk and it not being safe is acceptable. If it hits a certain threshold, we're going to go with it. That's where we're at.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right. All right. Yeah.
Um, finding. I've seen a million different people purporting that the vaccines contain all these different kinds of ingredients. I've never been able to confirm any of them.
Sure.
Right? Not even they don't even match. Right? One guy says it's got this in it, cyanide and formaldehyde, and somebody else,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I can find no cooperating evidence. Now, I'm not a great researcher, right? It's not like I'm an academic. I'm just a guy with Google, right? Looking around to see if there's at least one other place where I find the same something to say, oh, well, maybe that isn't attributed to the same source, right?
Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm. And the same source, of course, could say several different things in different articles.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and then you have to take it with a grain of salt, you've heard, obviously we've ranted, about the whole nature of profit and capitalism and, exactly how much money these, the pharmaceutical companies are making.
Oh,
right?
Mm-hmm.
Even though you and I and everybody listening paid for the development of it,
Sure.
invested $1 billion. We don't have if anybody did that on Shark Tank and say, yeah, well, you're not getting anything though. You're going to give me $1 million and I'm not giving you anything in return. Well, in fact, you get to buy what I'm producing.
Yes.
In bulk.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. No.
I'm not sure the sharks would go for that.
No. Certainly not.
So it is a time for people to really take the greatest responsibility that we've ever had to do since civilization began.
Mm. Yeah.
And this isn't a light calling, because you can't accept just pat answers. You can't accept the official narrative.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, you can't go running off on conspiracy theories. And I hate that term because it was invented by the CIA to discredit anybody who disagreed with what they wanted the official narrative to be,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so it is a demeaning term, and it shouldn't be. But people do kind of want to latch onto something really quickly,
right,
and not go into it in depth enough to find out if there's some substance to it. And what you find is, yes, there's some substance to it, and a whole lot of extra thrown in.
Yeah.
That is completely insubstantiated.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm perplexed. I'm going to admit publicly to this person, I understand exactly what she's feeling. It is a totally perplexing time to be alive and try to be human, and try to be loving and compassionate in a world that seems to have gone utterly batshit crazy.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And yet at the same time, that's on one level. I see the most incredible outbreaks and expressions of kindness and generosity, and friendliness and sensitivity. I mean, it's really unbelievable. People have been genuinely nicer everywhere I go since COVID has started.
Okay. Yeah.
Weird, right? But not really. It's just there's this sense of commonality, a sense of we are in this together, which is contrary to the message that we've been receiving for the last, 20 years of us against them, and the terrorists and the bad people and the good people. It's like suddenly, no, We're all confronted with exactly the same thing. And once again, our nature of love comes out. Our kindness comes out.
Yeah.
I don't see people flying off the handle towards others, towards the government. Yeah, towards mandates for vaccines, vaccine passports, and things like that. Yes, I have seen stuff like that. Anger
Mhm.
towards the faceless machine,
Yeah.
but not towards each other. And I just kind of invite everybody to think about that for a minute. What's been your experience when you have gone out, when you've gone to the grocery store, when you've gone to the places, all the places you've had to go, and when you get gas and or get your latte through the drive-through, right?
Yes.
um, what's your experience been? And in looking back on it, I go, it has been far more personable than it was beforehand.
Mm.
So when I see that, I'm incredibly encouraged. I'm not worried about the stupid governments.
That's
They,
good.
they, they're, they're powerless, really, which is why they have to
Yeah.
lie and cheat and deceive and all of that. Because if they had real power, they wouldn't have to do that.
Mhm.
If they really had something to say, if they were really telling the truth, they wouldn't have to spend billions trying to convince you it was true.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it really is billions.
Oh,
Uh,
hundreds of
Hundreds of
billions,
billions. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
hundreds of billions. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. And this is a really interesting question for the listener because this has been going on. The pandemic we're talking about here has been going on now for over a year. Good question for reflection. What has your experience been? And how different is it from the pre COVID experience? Really interesting question.
Yeah, and not just the inconveniences. Obviously, having to wear the mask and all of that stuff. The
Yeah.
stuff you couldn't do. I mean, I listen to people complain about it, and I think, yeah, I'm stuck here in my home with 800 channels, Netflix, HBO, and my
Hmm.
80-inch TV.
Oh, yeah.
Life really sucks. This is terrible.
Hmm.
Go,
Yeah.
dude. This is actually what you've always wanted, right? I want to have
Hmm.
enough money. I could just do whatever I want. Well, because sans the money, um,
Yeah.
here we are. It's actually pretty funny. But really, look at pay attention not so much to the inconveniences because obviously they're there, right? And even kind of the sense of isolation, which is really hard on human beings.
Hmm.
But
Right.
but how has the world been to you? How have others been to you? What's it been like when you have been out? Really focus the attention on the interrelationship between people and 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 compare it before and after. And my experience has been it's better,
Mhm.
noticeably better.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's been my experience by and large as well. And, what I would throw into this is that people seem to be more genuinely curious about the kind of thing we're talking about here, about the
Yes.
real meaning of things.
Well, to me, that's the big blessing of this. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Prior to this, it was all about the American dream was all completely a materialistic utopia
For sure. Yeah.
with just unlimited access to unlimited consumables, one thing after another. And to see that collapse, I think is the biggest blessing humanity could experience. It's a complete shift of our priorities and values.
Yeah.
People are more important than profit, more important than things.
Right.
Our interrelationships matter more than some kind of ideological rhetoric.
Hmm. Yes. Yeah.
All of that stuff falls away. You meet a person from another culture, a culture you think is backwards and that you hate. Just meet one and have a conversation. Good Lord, oh my God, they're just like we are.
Hmm. Oh,
What a
yeah.
surprise. All the people are telling you they're different and, every Muslim is a terrorist, right? And it's like, well, no, it's actually not. It's not true. There's no difference whatsoever. Skin color is a bit different. Clothes are different. Talk different. Metaphors are different. But underneath, we're not at all different.
Yeah.
Even the term race was invented. There's no such
Sure.
thing.
Mhm. Yeah, that's true.
It was
It's not.
invented
Yeah.
by conquering European white people to justify enslaving anybody who wasn't European and white.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
There isn't a race, right? The difference is in the appearance between what is called the races are absolutely superficial. They're the differences in features and skin tone and the like due to different amounts of light of how long the day was. Move north, you got whiter
Yeah.
because you had to absorb more of the sun,
hmm
right, to make the same amount of vitamin D. That's the only difference.
That's it. Yes. Yeah. That's it. Norway, when you have a week of sunshine, northern Norway, you have to absorb it all
All of it.
24 hours of it in 1 week.
Yeah,
hmm Oh,
you're
yeah.
just yeah you're just soaking it up. Whereas if you're in Africa and it's 18 hours a day of
Yeah.
sunlight, well, then you need skin that is resistant to it,
hmm
and
Yeah. Yeah.
that's all this is.
That's what it is. Yeah. Yeah. And it really is. I mean, it is that simple, isn't it? It's,
Yes, it is simply how the
mhm.
body has adapted to the environment, but the essential creature is the same.
Yeah.
And it's very unusual in human beings because it's not like we have a bunch of different species, like, all sorts of different kinds of wolves or foxes or badgers,
Right.
right? We all came from the same place.
Yeah.
That's stunning to me. We really all are related.
hmm Yeah.
We all have the same grandma.
We really do. So it's not just a reggae star or a rock and roll star saying we're all one,
No,
literally.
it's a reality. We are family.
hmm Yeah. Yeah. And I
I
think
don't know
that
what the
it,
number is. It's something like 99% of the genes in each one of us is absolutely
oh,
identical.
right. Yes.
Or
Yeah, that's true.
99.3 or something. I mean, it's just ridiculous, right?
hmm
Minor variations, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that that's something that a lot of people have pointed out to me is that okay, I'm paying more attention to my relationships, like we're talking about,
Yeah.
and that's really rising to the fore here, especially during this time.
Yeah, and thank God.
hmm
Thank God, our values are coming back in line with being human and what really matters. Because we got so far off the track. It really was about what you could accumulate, what you
Yes.
could accomplish. And if you look at it in the traditional system of the chakras,
hmm
all of those, all of the stuff that was the ideal of the West, most uh, sh- uh, shown most extremely shown in the United States, where the basic animal nature, right? Survival and acquiring stuff in order to reproduce progeny, family, and
hmm
all of that,
Yeah.
and success, status, ego, accomplishment, right? Those are all the base animal instincts represented by the lower three chakras
hmm
that are to be transcended. That's what the
Ah, yes.
the thing, the snake coiled up the middle represents,
Mhm.
the animal nature being transcended, and the intersect point is the heart, where it begins to open up. And I was just listening to Joseph Campbell this morning talking about the fifth chakra, and he was talking about the relationship between the fifth chakra and the third chakra. The third
Okay.
chakra being identity, ego, aggression, go
Sure.
get them. The self-made man, the Wall Street hedge fund manager, right? Right.
Yeah.
And he said what happens is through the transformation of the heart and the fifth chakra, that outward energy, that aggressive energy gets turned back on yourself, and it gets turned to introspection
hmm
with the same degree of intensity, same degree of passion, same degree of urgency, same degree of accomplishment except a completely different goal. And what a beautiful image that this entire thing turns back on yourself. And if you look, it's what's happening as a whole.
Right.
We've been forced to look back in ourselves. The 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 the, the meanings of the heart have become predominant. The
Hmm.
relationships, the
Yeah.
family that you can't see as much of, right? Suddenly,
Yes.
wow, I really appreciate them, right? And they me. So,
Hmm.
oh, they do like me. Look at that.
After all,
After all,
took a few
imagine that.
years, but I,
Yeah,
yeah.
but you can see that it forces this refocusing of the heart, which, if we're smart, can refocus the entire energy of our civilization and ourselves inward
Yeah.
to truly create a world that works for everybody, a world that's in
Mhm.
harmony with the earth, where
Right.
where we're no longer the exploiters, the rapers and pillagers of the earth, but we're real stewards. We understand its
Yeah.
nature. We work with it,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
Right. Because if we work with it, it's an infinite resource. It will never run out. If we don't, we can exhaust it. Just like anything else, everything is replenishable to a degree. If you stress it
Yeah.
outside of that level, it's not replenishable anymore. The system breaks down, and guess what? It doesn't come back.
Yeah. Yes. Then it's just gone, and
Yes, like
can't
an
do that.
extinct, some extinct critter.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, and it's so evident that I know listeners can just scan your experience for the last year, and there are so many things that we've all been forced to reconsider, and it really is that it's been a refocus on the heart and the meanings of the heart. GP, I love the way you put that.
Well, and it's I'm just noticing it.
Oh yeah.
And what's
Yeah.
interesting is nobody planned this, right?
No.
And nobody decided that this was going to be the outcome of the refocusing on the heart, which kind of brings me back to the original point: is that love is your nature,
Mhm.
right? It's your true nature is calling you back. You've wandered far from the tree,
Yes.
right? Right, and are suffering the consequences. It's time for the prodigal son to come home. Um, you know, and it has happened so naturally, and it's happened naturally to everyone. You have to you just inevitably have to recognize it has to be our nature.
Yeah.
It's not artificial. We're not making this up. When things like this happen, when things get tough, people come together.
Mhm.
Differences fall apart, right? Commonality emerges.
Yeah.
Mutual respect, mutual tolerance emerges. The laws become less rigid, more servants of humanity rather than masters,
Sure.
and
Oh yeah.
you gain mastery over everything through the heart. It's paradoxical. When you lose control, you gain mastery.
Yeah. There you go. That's it.
It just happens. There's the wisdom in it, because you've harmonized with the nature of the universe. How could it not work?
Exactly. Yeah. It's got to work. It has
It's
to.
got to work.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the nature of things. This is eh, this to me is one of the deep spiritual insights. It's the whole meaning behind the Tao Te Ching.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
The Tao being the way. That's that's all it means, is the way things actually are. Um, it is a realization of the way things actually are, and then there's a voluntary harmonizing with it. It doesn't have to be forced. I mean, force it, right? It's like that would be like trying to stand in the ocean and force the wave back out to sea.
Mm.
You'll
Mm.
get pummeled, you know. You could try.
Yeah.
right? Or you can break out the surfboard,
Um,
and have yourself a nice little ride, and then do it again. And um, it's simply, we have the arrogance of the human mind has for so long thought itself superior, that it could control nature and bend it to its will.
mhm.
And the end result is just nothing but misery, suffering, unhappiness,
Yeah.
lack, conflict. I mean, hello.
Yeah.
And you're not going to ever get anything but that. When you fight with the way things are, you lose.
Mhm.
It's inevitable. I just hope we wake up to that in time so that we don't take everything with us.
Yeah. And what strikes me is that this is a tremendous opportunity right now with the pandemic, with all of the emphasis, the renewed emphasis on interrelationships and commonality. Let's take advantage of this opportunity.
Yeah, we have to stop focusing on what we've lost
Mhm.
and become deeply aware of what we've gained.
Yeah.
Believe me, what we've lost was worth losing. It was no great shakes. It was not helping us, right? But when we don't know it's not helping us, we think this is the way it's supposed to be. Well, then wisdom has to intervene and smack you upside the head, take
Mhm.
away your toy, right?
Oh, yeah.
Until
Yeah.
you realize that you don't need it anymore. It
Mhm.
reminds me of when my kids were young. When I grew up, Saturday morning cartoons, right? I'd be
Yes. Yeah.
glued to
Yeah.
the TV, and
Mhm.
I had fond memories of it,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yeah. Mhm.
Right, as a
You bet.
as a kid, um, and so when my kids were young, I thought it was kind of fun. They were watching the Saturday morning cartoons, but then I noticed, it got to around 11 o'clock, the last cartoon was over, and I all of a sudden they were saying, "I'm bored. I don't know what to do." They just kind of wander around. And after a while, I put two and two together.
Mhm.
And so I said, okay, here's the deal. You each get 1 hour of, of, uh, of cartoons. You have to agree what to watch. It's going to be the same hour.
All
So
right.
here's the hour. You guys agree. You guys come to terms with what it is you're going to watch. Cut it down to an hour. Same thing. I'm bored. I don't want to. So I pulled the plug. Oh my
Mhm.
God, I was the most hated man on earth
No, I'm sure you were.
for quite a while. But
Evil.
just a couple of weeks, it was like no more bored. They were out playing. They're out doing. I mean, all the energy was back.
Mhm.
They'd just been hypnotized
Yeah.
into this state, and this is what we've been advertising and marketing, and the promises of this and that, and 3 steps to having everything you want, and
Oh, yeah. Sure.
right,
Yes.
right, the secret, right, and
Mhm.
the secret behind the secret, and the secret revealed about the secrets. um,
Ooh. Wow. Interesting. Yeah. Hmm.
it's just been this hypnotic trance we've all been wandering around
No
in,
kidding.
expecting, and not, and completely disconnected from our own lives.
Yeah. Yeah. And a great question for all of us listening is what can we do to get more reconnected? Because the opportunities are there, and boom, in the last year, they're right in front of us, front and center. So, what can you do to get reconnected?
Yes, that's a oof. It's something that everybody needs to examine for themselves. Right?
Yeah.
Can make some
No.
suggestions. We can say, look, your family, your friends, neighbors. My son, who lives near you
Yeah.
in Tempe, Arizona, he said, I didn't know my neighbors really. There's a couple of them I got together with. He says, all of a sudden, we're all standing out on the street. We're all talking. He said, one guy in the neighborhood even came around with a list for people's phone numbers in case anybody needed help,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
creating a telephone tree for the neighborhood. And Chris said, this is great.
Mm, mhm.
This is this is this is wonderful.
No,
All
yeah,
of us,
yeah,
all of a sudden, it was like instead of sitting in your background, backyard in the fences, and people are out in the front. They're
right,
respectful, social distancing and all,
sure.
and all, but that that energy of connection and that human sense of bonding that comes
Mhm.
to us so very naturally.
Oh yeah,
Um, just find the ways to do it.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
Hmm.
look for the ways to do it.
Hmm.
And part of the species, the symptoms of the miasma, the trance we're all in, is
Oh,
going. Oh, I don't know how to do that. I mean, if somebody says that to me, I can
sure.
just hear my two kids going, "I'm bored. It's
Hmm. Oh, yeah,
okay."
yeah, yeah.
Turn off Netflix.
Mm.
Turn off HBO Plus or whatever it is you've got. Right. If you need to buy something, don't go to Amazon. There's some local stores that are open that need your business. Guess what? They have real people in them.
Mm. Is that what that is? Okay.
Yeah,
Ooh,
they have
oh,
real
yeah, yeah, yeah,
they
yeah.
have real people in them that they're
Mm.
talking. They're lonely. They're standing there all day long.
Yes. Yeah.
Rediscover. Imagine what life was like before any of this, all the technological distractions existed. What did we do?
Mm.
Somebody
Hmm.
might play piano and people would sit around and sing a song, or
Yeah.
read books, you know,
Hmm.
go out visiting, right?
Yes.
Right?
Go out visiting.
Sit
Yeah.
on the sit a spell, have a chat on the porch,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Share a beer, or a coffee, or
Sure.
um, just remember what it was like when the highlight of our life was our interaction with other human beings.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And how fun was that?
Oh my
Yeah,
God,
it was great. I
it was
loved it.
great.
Yeah.
It was
Hmm.
absolutely great. Yeah. We didn't need Match.com
Oh no, no.
or even Tinder.
Yeah.
We managed to find ourselves in the midst of in the midst of all of that. But
Yes.
those are all really cheap substitutes for
Hmm.
simply the lack of ongoing human connection.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that this is a beautiful place to wind this down because that really is what it's all about is that human connection. And for the listeners who are wondering how you can find out more about GP and his teachings, gpwalsh.com is where to go. gpwalsh.com includes all of GP's teachings, workshops, meditations, including pieces of music, beautiful pieces of music that you yourself, GP, have composed. That's where I would send all of you. And GP, as we wrap up here, what else would you like the listeners to take from this? Really, I mean, it's a heartening dialogue. It really
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we started off by looking at fear, but
Yeah.
but fear is temporary. It's transient.
Hmm.
Love is not. And when we talk about how do you choose love, I would put that question back after this whole discussion we've had, bring around the end, because that interconnection, to reestablish that, that's how you choose love. And it's not how do we get the world to choose love. Well, one at a time. You do it.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Choose to go shop someplace where there be people, and you can give yourself a bit of yourself to them, instead of sitting down at Amazon. Believe me, Jeff's got plenty. He's going to be okay.
He's definitely not lacking.
He's not going to be lacking anytime soon. So just ask yourself, how do I choose love right now?
Hmm.
Not a generalized thing,
Yeah.
right? Not like an abstraction of how do we, like some ideology of choosing love, right? Or some bad song,
Mm. Yeah. No.
or some spiritual platitude that means absolutely nothing. How do you do it right now, right this moment? And
Mhm.
it could be nothing more than just doing something loving for yourself, taking a walk, just saying
Yeah.
hi to a neighbor. How you doing?
Mhm.
Um, the love being the principle of being is absolutely limitless in its capability of expression.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even matter what you do. If you do it with love, it
Exactly.
becomes
Yeah.
love.
Mhm. It
You
is.
can
Yeah.
you can you can make vacuuming a love fest.
I know people that do this.
You can.
Oh yeah.
Right? What a power. What a power that is.
Mm.
Because you are love, consciously engaged with that, everything you do becomes love.
Mm.
What a calling that is.
Wonderful. I love it. Yes, everything you do becomes love. Well, GP, this has been so wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thanks, Dumbass. It's always great.
So much fun. Yes, this has been Master Spiritual Teacher GP Walsh on Decide to Transform. Thank you all for tuning in, and be sure to choose love. And there are many ways to be deeply interconnected. So go forth, and thank you for tuning in.